Well, this is news just coming into our newsroom. So at this hour, a barrage of drone strikes has hit Moscow. This was reported by Russian media. Officials say the attacks resulted in minor damage and some people were forced to evacuate their homes. Now, several buildings were damaged in the attack. However, no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks just yet. Now, as per reports, around 25 drones were involved in the attack. Russian officials say all drones were shot down on their approach to Moscow. Russian officials claim that the latest attack on Moscow was orchestrated by Ukrainian terrorists. This comes a day after Russia launched a wave of flying bombs on Kyiv, killing one person. The incident also comes weeks after 2 drones exploded over the Kremlin. Again, a barrage of drone strikes has hit Moscow. This was reported by Russian media. Officials say the attacks resulted in minor damage and some people were forced to evacuate their homes. Several buildings were damaged in this attack. However, no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks just yet. As per reports, around 25 drones were involved in the attack. Russian officials say all drones were shot down on their approach to Moscow. Russian officials claim that the latest attack on Moscow could have been orchestrated by Ukrainian terrorists. Now, this comes a day after Russia launched a wave of flying bombs on Kyiv, killing one person. The incident also comes weeks after 2 drones exploded over the Kremlin. And now we are being joined by a journalist from St. Petersburg in Russia. Thank you for joining us at this hour and welcome to WION World is One. Probably you can tell us what is happening at this hour. What are the Russian officials saying about this latest incident?
Right. So far we know that around 25 to 30 drones have been intercepted. A few of them crashed into the residential building in Moscow, both in the Moscow city and in the suburbs. We don't know about any major casualties for now. So it has happened at around 6:30 a.m. in the morning and at the later hour as well. So it has been a series of attacks. We have the footage and everything coming out from Moscow. So I believe this would be the response to Russia's massive strikes on Kyiv and on a lot of military targets across Ukraine over the past 48 hours, because those strikes have been some of the most intense, as both authorities in Kyiv and Russian authorities and mill bloggers claim. So we would see that as sort of a response, despite, as you mentioned, Ukraine has not yet claimed responsibility, but I would note that Ukraine has never claimed responsibility for any of the attacks inside Russia.
Right.
Some of the attacks, like last week, we had a group of insurgents in the Belgorod region of Russia that is bordering Ukraine. So Ukraine said these were organized by some groups that are against the Russian government. But as we all understand, this is directly related to Ukraine and financed by Ukraine, and they had used the Western weapons supplies in that attack. So I think there are no doubts of Ukraine's involvement in these attacks inside Russia.
We are reporting that around 25 drones were involved in the attack. Do we know some of these buildings which were targeted by name?
Those are residential.
Residential buildings?
Those are residential buildings. Yeah, those are residential buildings. So you have the footage and the photo of the top floors, like 13th, 14th floor of the multi-story building being a bit burnt. But there is no serious damage, at least what we can judge from the footage that we got so far.
Do we have any further information from the Russian authorities or the Russian president regarding this latest development in St. Petersburg as of yet?
No, we are talking about Moscow. The St. Petersburg and peaceful and quiet for now. There is nothing reported from St. Petersburg so far. The largest attack that happened in St. Petersburg was in March, when a terrorist attack happened, killing one person, a famous military blogger, and injuring over 30 people. It was an explosion, a bomb explosion in the cafe that hurt many people. So that was the biggest attack so far in the city. Whatever is happening today, the drone attacks are happening in Moscow. And lately, of course, there have been drones attack in the areas of Russia, in the regions of Russia that are bordering Ukraine. Like Belgorod region has been under massive attack for months, but especially lately over the last few days.
We are also reporting that people have been forced to evacuate their homes. These residential buildings that you mentioned have been attacked. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, some reports like that are coming, that few people had to evacuate because of the damage to their flats. But this is just happening right now. Actually, there are less of the official comments on the attacks and on the evacuation process. We get most of the information for now from the Telegram channels and the footage that residents put out themselves. So we have to see how this develops. But so far, I've not seen any serious reports of any serious damage or casualties to the residents. Hopefully, there won't be.
Hopefully there won't be. Kondratieva from St. Petersburg, Russia, thank you very much for talking to WION One.
Thank you for having me
today. And if you're just joining us, this is just news coming into our newsrooms at this hour. We are reporting a barrage of drone strikes has hit Moscow. This was reported by Russian media. Officials say the attacks resulted in minor damages, and some people were forced to evacuate their homes. Several buildings were damaged in the attack. However, no one has claimed responsibility for the attack till now. As per reports, around 25 drones were involved in the attack. Russian officials say all drones were shot down on their approach to Moscow. We now have Glenn Diesen, who is a professor of international relations, University of Southeastern Norway. Glenn, welcome to the broadcast, and probably you can start by telling us what's the implication that this drone attack will have in the war or in the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, it doesn't appear to have any impact on the military capabilities of Russia. They don't seem to have struck any military targets. Instead, it appears that these residential buildings which have been hit, it's not clear if this was intentional or if they were going for a different target. But nonetheless, the consequences will be that this is deemed to be a huge escalation. Again, in the past, Zelensky said that they would not target either Putin or Moscow, but obviously there was a drone attack earlier this month on Moscow, on attacking the Kremlin, and now, of course, this attack on directly on Moscow, on these residential buildings. Now, it's obviously this is in retaliation for the Russian attacks on Kyiv over the past 2 days. But again, this is how we see the dangerous escalation is growing out of control, because Russia will definitely respond to this in a very strong manner, possibly going after Zelensky himself.
Right. There are some people who are saying that this could be a retaliation from Ukraine because Russia launched a wave of flying bombs on Kyiv, killing one person yesterday. What do you think?
Yeah, it's quite possible. Again, this is how escalations tend to work, as we've seen now over the past few weeks, with the British sending their long-distance missiles. They're sending ammunition with depleted uranium. The NATO side sending their F-16s. And all of this is, well, including the attack on the Kremlin with drones, of course, all of these are escalations. The Russians then escalate in return, and now we see the Ukrainians escalating as well. So this is the problem of escalation, where neither side really has the escalation dominance in terms of being able not just to escalate tensions, but also de-escalate.
Right.
So this can very quickly spiral out of control, and it's quite possible that Moscow will hold the West responsible for this as well.
Glenn, Russia's defense ministry tweeted a message this morning. They say that this morning the Kyiv regime carried out a terrorist attack with drones on targets in the city of Moscow. 8 drones were used in the attack. All of the enemy drones were downed. And they also say that Ukraine was behind the drone attack in Moscow. What do you read from this message?
Well, it doesn't say much beyond what's already become available information. I mean, there couldn't be anyone else besides Ukraine launching these drones. So the wording, though, of course, terrorist attack, yes, you can argue because it targets civilian infrastructure, but the language used by Ukraine, NATO, Russia, it tends to, in wartime, we often see the language being used to either assign or deprive the various actors of legitimacy. So,
all right, I've been talking to Glenn Deason. He's a professor of international relations, University of Southeastern Norway. Glenn, thank you for talking to WION World is One.
My pleasure.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.